a wooden crate on a pallet in a factory in Gloucestershire, England. 6 characters stenciled on the side. K5000. Inside sits a 3-cylinder diesel engine, painted red, small enough for 2 men to lift onto a truck. In March of 2026, that truck left for Italy. Nobody photographed it leaving. Beta put 2 pictures on their own website instead of the Italian distributors standing beside the crate. The engine was the 50,000th Beta Marine had ever sold. It took the company 38 years to reach that number. 50,000 engines, 38 years. That single ratio explains why the diesel under your companionway steps now costs more than a new car. What is bolted into your engine bay right now, and what did the last quote come to? Put the figure in the comments. This is what Yachts and Boats does with numbers like that. Subscribe so the next one reaches you. Beta Marine published the milestone themselves. The 50,000th engine was a Beta 25, ordered by their Italian distributor, Scan Diesel of Milan. Its destination was a 30-foot yacht that needed re-engining. Divide 50,000 by 38 and you get about 1,300 engines a year. That covers everything Beta builds. Yachts, fishing boats, canal narrowboats, generators, the lot. Now hold that against the factory that makes the part Beta starts with. Because Beta does not cast its own engine blocks. It buys them from Kubota, the Japanese company that builds compact industrial diesels for tractors, generators, and mini excavators. Beta says so on the front page of its own website. Kubota holds the largest share on Earth of the market for industrial engines under 100 horsepower. According to the Japan Land Engine Manufacturers Association, Japanese makers have produced between 1.5 and 2 million industrial diesel engines a year for the past decade. 2 million a year against 1,300. That is the same iron, the same castings, the same crankshaft, the same 3 pistons. The difference in price is not the difference in the metal. Every cost that goes into an engine has to be recovered from the people who buy it. The tooling, the certification testing, the dealer network, the warranty reserve. Kubota splits that bill across 2 million buyers a year. Beta splits its share of it across 1,300. Kubota has been building engines since 1922. Its own corporate history records passing 25 million engines produced. Beta has built 50,000, and the pool Beta sells into keeps shrinking. The National Marine Manufacturers Association counted 215,237 new boats sold in the United States in 2025, down 8.8% on the year before. The median age of an American boat owner is now 60. Jack Ellis of InfoLink put it bluntly in the industry press. Today's buyers are the same people as 25 years ago, only 25 years older. Every year, there are fewer of you to split the bill. Try to find out how many of those buyers were sailors and you hit the first locked door. The National Marine Manufacturers Association publishes powerboat unit sales freely. In 2024, it reported 238,117 new boats sold, of which 141,590 were outboard boats. The Sailboat line sits inside the statistical abstract, and a non-member pays $2,599 for the registrations report. The number of sailboats sold in America last year is a number you can buy. It is not a number you can look up. Nani does the same thing with Kubota blocks in France. Before either of them existed, an American company had already worked it out. Universal Motor Company of Oshkosh, Wisconsin was once the largest builder of marine engines in the world. Their famous product was the Atomic 4, a flathead gasoline 4-cylinder that went into over 40,000 sailboats between 1947 and 1984. Between 1965 and 1975, that one engine went into as many as 80% of every new sailboat built in the 25 to 40-foot range. At its peak, Universal controlled roughly 85% of the American sailboat auxiliary market. Then, diesel arrived, and Universal did the obvious thing. In 1976, it started marinizing Kubota tractor engines and selling them to Catalina. Yanmar reached the American market in 1980. By 1989, Yanmar had taken 45% of the diesel auxiliary business against Universal's 42%. Universal did not stop there. The Marinized Kubota it launched became the M Series, and practical sailor records roughly 40,000 of those little 18 horsepower diesels built, with around 20,000 still running today. The company that once owned the water is now a parts catalog. The part of this that gets me is how ordinary it all looks from the dock. You lift the engine cover, you see a red block with a Beta badge or a grey one with a Yanmar badge, and you assume you are looking at something built for boats from the ground up. What sits there is a tractor engine in a jacket. That jacket is real engineering, and it costs real money, and we will get to exactly what is inside it. But the volume arithmetic only explains half the price. The other half is a decision, and it is the reason you have never seen a price list. Go to the Beta Marine website. There is a page in the main menu called Pricing and Ordering. It contains no prices. What it contains is an instruction to contact a dealer or a distributor for a quotation. Yanmar does not publish prices either, and goes further by controlling distributor territory, which means the dealer nearest you is frequently the only one who will quote you at all. Volvo Penta publishes nothing. 3 manufacturers, each with a fixed factory price for a crate engine sitting on a pallet, and not one of them will tell you what it is. Installation varies boat to boat. Nobody disputes that. Engine beds, shaft alignment, exhaust runs, and control cables are genuinely different on a Cape Dory than on a Beneteau, and no honest builder would quote that work blind. The crate engine is not different. It is the same object in the same box at the same weight. That number could sit on a web page tomorrow, and it does not. So the sailor pricing a repower cannot compare 3 engines without 3 separate conversations with 3 salesmen, each of whom knows roughly what the other 2 quoted and knows for certain that the buyer does not, which leaves almost no published prices anywhere in the record. There is one, and it is worth walking through in detail. In Practical Sailor, a retired Marine Corps officer named John Stone documented the complete diesel installation in his Cape Dory 36, a boat called Far Reach. He had rebuilt her from a bare hull over 6 years and sailed her 8,000 nautical miles with no inboard engine at all, including 2 offshore round trips from North Carolina to the Virgin Islands. When he finally decided to fit one, he did what almost nobody does. He calculated what he actually needed. Using the Vic Prop sizing calculator, Stone worked out that his 17,000-pound boat required 12 horsepower to make 5 knots in flat water. To reach hull speed of 7.8 knots, he would need a minimum of 35. He had no interest in hull speed under power. He wanted 5 knots and a folding propeller with almost no drag. Then he drove to Beta Marine's American headquarters in Oriental, North Carolina, and sat down with a technical representative named Farron Peffer. Peffer's first recommendation was an engine between 38 and 43 horsepower. Stone had already calculated 12. To his credit, Peffer accepted the arithmetic once Stone explained his goals and eventually pointed out that a 25 horsepower engine shares its footprint with a 20 and costs only $300 more. Stone took the 25. That decision is worth pausing on because it ran against the recommendation he walked in with, and he only had the confidence to make it because he had done the arithmetic himself before he arrived. He paid $10,870 including tax. That covered the 3-cylinder Beta 25, a TMC 40 transmission, an upgraded instrument panel, and a 75-amp alternator. It also included a 20% boat show and veteran discount. That article was first published in March of 2023, so treat the figure as a 2023 price, with a fifth already taken off it. And that number buys you an engine sitting on a pallet. It does not touch the shaft log, the stern tube, the engine beds, the fuel tank, the seacock, the exhaust, the controls, or the crane hire. Now look at what Stone was originally pointed toward. In the 1950s, the accepted rule for a sailboat auxiliary was 1 horsepower for every ton of displacement. It drifted to 2, then 3. It now sits at 5 to 6. Nobody changed the physics of a displacement hull. The water pushes back exactly as hard as it did in 1955. What changed is the number the industry quotes when a sailor asks how much engine he needs. That is the part I find genuinely hard to defend. The horsepower a boat requires is a calculation, not an opinion, and any sailor with a propeller calculator can run it in 4 minutes. Then Peffer said something that should be printed on the inside of every engine cover in the fleet. He told Stone that with a few exceptions, most of the parts on a Beta engine are Kubota tractor engine parts, and that they can be bought worldwide for less money than the same components sold as marine. A manufacturer's own technical representative had just confirmed that the cheapest way to maintain your marine engine is to stop buying marine parts for it. That single sentence changes what a repower quote actually means. Which part of it surprises you more, that it is true, or that a company representative said it out loud? He was not being disloyal. He was being useful, and that is exactly why Beta has the reputation it has. But sit with what he described. The impeller, the filters, the gaskets, the water pump, the injectors on many of these engines carry two identities. One of them lives in a tractor catalog. The other lives in a marine catalog at a marine price. There is a genuine difference, and it is worth naming precisely. A marinized engine gets raw, seawater pulled through a heat exchanger, sacrificial anodes bolted on to corrode before the expensive metal does, corrosion-resistant fasteners, and a water-jacketed exhaust manifold so the exhaust gas cools before it reaches rubber. Those parts do not exist on a tractor, and they are not optional at sea. Salt water is the whole reason any of it exists. A raw water, cooled engine pumps the same seawater that eats through steel piling straight past its own metal every hour it runs. The anodes are soft lumps bolted on to be destroyed first. The exhaust manifold carries a water jacket because dry exhaust gas at 500 degrees would set fire to the hose it feeds. None of that is marketing. The heat exchanger is marine. The impeller is frequently not. Knowing which is the entire difference between a $40 part and a $140 part several times a season for the next 20 years. There is a second cost sitting behind the engine price, and it arrives on a timer. If your boat has a sail drive rather than a shaft, Volvo Penta specifies that the rubber diaphragm sealing the drive leg through the hull be replaced every 7 years as a minimum. Volvo has published no failure rate data supporting that interval. The job is not a filter change. It means hauling the boat, disconnecting the exhaust, the fuel lines and the wiring, sliding the whole engine forward to clear the drive splines, and lifting the leg out through the hull. On some modern production yachts, it means dismantling joinery to reach it. Owners routinely report pulling 14 and 18-year-old diaphragms that show no deterioration at all. Those are anecdotes, and I will not present them as data. What is not anecdotal is the enforcement. Insurers can decline a claim where the manufacturer's service schedule was not followed, so the owner performs major surgery on a healthy system on a schedule nobody has justified to him in writing. None of that is a manufacturing cost. It is a liability position, and you are the one funding it. And there is one more party with an opinion about your engine. That party wrote the rules that made it expensive, and it has an assumption about you that is simply false. The Environmental Protection Agency divides marine diesels into categories, and for decades most sailboat auxiliaries fell through the gap between them. The 1999 marine engine rule covered new marine diesels at or above 37 kilowatts, which is 50 horsepower. Anything smaller was left to the land-based non-road standards. Your 25 horsepower Beta and your 29 horsepower Yanmar were, in regulatory terms, garden machinery. The 2008 rule closed that gap and pulled sub-50 horsepower engines into the Marine Tier 3 program. There is also a specific exemption written into that rule, and it is the reason Beta and Nanny exist. The EPA permits a marine engine produced by marinizing an already certified non-road or highway engine to ride on that existing certification. In the trade, it is called the dresser exemption. Without it, a company selling 1,300 engines a year could not afford to certify anything, and the small marinizers would be gone. So far, this is dry, and then you reach the definition of useful life. Every certified engine carries a regulatory useful life, the period the manufacturer must guarantee it will stay within its emissions limits. For a Category 1 commercial marine diesel, the one in a tugboat or a fishing vessel, that figure is 10,000 hours or 10 years. Drop down to a recreational marine diesel, the engine sitting in your bilge, and it collapses to 1,000 hours. The emissions warranty period is 500 hours or 3 years, 1,000 hours. A cruising sailor who runs 300 hours in a season crosses the entire regulatory life of his engine in under 4 years. Somebody who does a season in the Adriatic, a summer in the Ionian, and one delivery down the coast has already used more engine life than the federal government assumed he ever would. That is the assumption the entire small marine diesel category is built on. Not that these engines fail at 1,000 hours, nobody is claiming that. The claim is narrower and stranger. The regulatory framework treats a sailboat auxiliary as a leisure item that will be used lightly, occasionally, and then retired, and it prices its compliance burden accordingly. Now put that next to the fleet. Universal built over 40,000 Atomic 4 engines between 1947 and 1984. Roughly 20,000 of them are estimated to still be in service. The company that made them is gone. Universal was swallowed by Westerbeke, and Westerbeke's own American parts distributor now states plainly on its website that there are no new marine propulsion engines available. Parts and generators only. Two of the biggest names in American sailboat auxiliaries have stopped building engines entirely. The engines they built in the 1960s are still pushing boats around Chesapeake Bay. Half the fleet is running on hardware that outlived the corporations, the regulators, and the sales advice that told everyone to rip it out. And every surviving manufacturer prices that graveyard into your quote. They watched Universal die and then watched Westerbeke walk away from propulsion altogether. When Beta or Yanmar sets a number, part of that number is insurance against becoming the next name in the parts catalog. That is the risk nobody mentions when the quote slides across the desk. It is also why the Kubota block matters more than any brochure will ever admit. If a Kubota-based marinizer folds tomorrow, the base engine parts still exist in the industrial channel because 2 million of those engines ship a year. Lose a maker with its own proprietary block, and the owner is holding a very expensive hull fixture. Which brings this to the comparison everybody makes and almost nobody has updated. Every video on marine engine pricing reaches for the same line. An engine costs more than a Nissan Versa. The Versa is dead. Nissan ended production for the American market in December of 2025. As of 2026, there is no new car on sale in the United States below $20,000 at all. The cheapest new vehicle available is a Hyundai Venue at $20,250. Meanwhile, the average American paid $49,758 for a new vehicle in June of 2026, after prices peaked at $50,609 in December. So the honest version of the comparison is not that a marine diesel costs more than a cheap car. The cheap car is gone. Both ladders were pulled up in the same decade, for the same reason. And a man who could once buy a small car and a small boat on a tradesman's wage can now comfortably buy neither. Here is where the volume argument and the price argument finally separate. 50,000 engines in 38 years. 2 million industrial diesels a year. That gap is real, it is arithmetic, and it genuinely explains why a marinized Kubota costs what it costs. Nobody amortizes a certification program across 1,300 units and sells it cheap. But volume does not explain why the crate price is unpublished. It does not explain why a sailor who needs 12 horsepower gets pointed at 43. It does not explain why the regulator writing the rules assumed 1,000 hours while 20,000 engines built before 1984 are still running. Those are choices. They sit on top of the arithmetic, and they are the part you can actually do something about. Run the propeller calculator before you take anyone's horsepower recommendation. 12 minutes of arithmetic has moved sailors down 2 engine sizes and saved them thousands. Get the crate price from all 3 marinizers in writing on the same day for the same specification. Since none of them will publish it, the only comparison table that exists is the one you build. And before you buy any consumable, find the Kubota part number for it. A Beta technical representative already told a national magazine that most of them are cheaper outside the marine channel. The math is not subtle. You are paying to be one of 1,300 people a year in a world that manufactures for 2 million. Once you understand that ratio, you stop seeing a price tag on the dealer's quote and you start seeing a head count. and it holds everywhere in this industry, from the anode to the alternator to the yard bill in April. That is what Yachts and Boats takes apart, one number at a time. Subscribe, and the next one finds you.